In this example, we are going to solve a linear system word problem, an application. So the story goes that a group of students attend a concert. They purchase 4 sodas and 2 hot dogs, and they spend $18. At intermission, they return to the concession stand and purchase 3 more hot dogs and 2 sodas, and they spend $17. On the drive home, they are trying to work out what everyone owes, and they realize that they cannot remember the exact cost of a soda and a hot dog. So we need to set up and solve a system of equations to find the cost of each item, which would be the hot dogs and the sodas. So first of all, we need to recognize that these problems will always have 2 pieces of information that are missing. There's 2 things that we want to know, and those 2 things that we want to know will be our variables. In this case, the 2 things we need to know are the cost of a soda and the cost of a hot dog. And those are going to be our variables for our system, so we need to assign a variable for each. It doesn't matter what you assign them, so you can pick something descriptive if you like, or you can go with the standard X and Y as long as you keep track of who is who throughout the problem. S is kind of a tricky variable to use because S can end up looking like a 5, so I'm going to use D for drinks in this first variable, and I'll use H for hot dogs in the second one. So those will be my 2 variables. It's a really good idea to define your variables right from the beginning so that you're not confused at the end when you're trying to figure out what it is you actually solved for. Okay, so the second thing we need to do is actually begin setting up our equations. You should also know that these types of problems will usually provide 2 different scenarios for you, and both scenarios will utilize the 2 variables in some way. So our 2 scenarios have to do with the same group of students. But the scenarios are separated based on the 2 purchases. So they purchase a bunch of stuff, sounds like at the beginning of the concert, and then at intermission they return and purchase more things. So those are really our 2 scenarios, the 2 different purchases. If they started by purchasing 4 sodas, and we don't know the cost of a soda, but we're calling that cost D, then the amount they spent would be 4D. And 2 hot dogs means that they would have additionally purchased 2H. And their total amount that they spent would be $18 for their first purchase. At intermission, they return, and now they purchase 3 more hot dogs. Now be careful, this one's listing it in the other order, so that's 3 hot dogs this time, and 2 soft drinks or sodas, and this time they spend $17. So here is our system of equations. That's the system that we were asked to set up. This is probably the hardest part of the word problem, is just getting through writing the system. Okay, now in order to solve it, we have to pick a solving technique. We can use substitution or elimination if we want to use an algebraic method, or if we wanted to solve one of these for one of the variables, we could plug it into our calculator and solve graphically or numerically. I'm going to go with the elimination method because the system is already set up where all the variables line up with one another. So in order to solve by elimination, I need to eliminate one of my variables, and I'm going to go ahead and try to get rid of the D's. So if I want to get rid of the D in my system, I need those to have the same coefficient but with opposite signs. Well, if I leave the 4 alone, I could make the 2D turn into a 4, and in fact he can go ahead and become a -4 if I were to just multiply that second equation by -2. So I'm going to have a new set of equations. I'll write them over here. The first one will stay the same. It'll be 4D plus 2H equals 18. And the second one will now become, multiplying through by -2, it'll be -4d minus 6h equals, and 2 times 17, that would be -34. All right, so if we go ahead and take the system and add it straight down, we get to cancel or eliminate the d's, and we will have -4h equals -34 plus 18, that would be -16. Oh, all right. And so dividing both sides by -4, we've got h equals +4. And if you remember that h is the cost of a hot dog, that means that we now know the cost of our hot dog. So hot dogs cost looks like $4. Now we still need to find the cost of a soda. So for that, we're going to take our h equals 4, and we need to plug it back into one of our original equations. Now it doesn't matter which equation you use. I'm going to go ahead and use this first one over here and say 4d plus 2h, and we know our h value is 4, and that should be equal to 18. Okay, so solving for d, we have 4d plus 8 equals 18. Subtract 8 from both sides, and we get 4d equals 10. So d is equal to 10 divided by 4. And since this is money, we don't want to leave it as a fraction. We would want to write what 10 divided by 4 is as a decimal, and that works out to be 2.5. And remember, d is the cost of a soda, so that means that sodas cost looks like $2.50 each. Okay, so again, you want to be real organized with your work. Make sure that you define each of your variables, set up your system, and then solve using whatever technique you're comfortable with. And then at the end, make sure that you do go ahead and state your answer. So if the question asks you what the cost of each is, make sure that you take the time to write them in those terms using units. Like the $sign would be considered the units for this problem.